audience, so please go ahead.
Hi, can y'all hear me?
Yes.
I'm married to a reader and a local historian. I have two questions. I was in New Orleans about 2.5 weeks ago and was talking with one of the natives there about the oil spill. He said that the owner of the corporation that developed microbes that eat oil had come to New Orleans and offered his services to BP. Now, I'm familiar with the corporation because those microbes did a lot of cleaning up here in the area a few years ago. What he said was that BP refused the services because they didn't want to lose the oil, they wanted to reclaim it and resell it. So I guess my first question is, does any of this make sense? The other question is, if when the oil, as it already has done, it gets into the loop, will it come back around within a year and hit the Texas Gulf, the Texas part of the Gulf Coast, where we are?
That's two very good questions. One is based on Michael. When our panelists get their thoughts together and answer that, I would tell you on the micro type of thing. That is one. As far as could they reclaim the oil that's coming short? No, not really. Once it gets mixed with water, it emulsifies, and it won't even burn at that point. So there's not really much of that reclamation you could do in that situation. But microbial, breaking down with microbes, is frankly our best possibility there too. From the panel members, do you have anything to add on that? Paul, recommend.
Yeah, it's. I actually spent a lot of years studying microbial decomposition of oil back in our Santa Barbara days, and it is true that oil seeps naturally into the environment, and so there are suites of bacteria in the environment that degrade oil. With genetic engineering, you could probably create superbugs that eat even better. But I would caution these people on a couple of issues. Number one, that works best at the surface where it's warm, you have light and a lot of oxygen because bacteria require oxygen to grow. Recall my comments earlier. One of the big problems right now is that oil is dispersed throughout the water column. And a lot of it is in the deep sea. And the deep sea is imagine being inside your icebox with the weight of a mile of water sitting on top of your chest. So it's cold, it's dark, and the pressure's high. I can also tell you, because I tried to measure rates of decomposition in deep sea, it's almost immeasurable. Whereas I can measure rates on the order of years in like 50 feet of water. When we tried to measure microbial composition rates in deep water, it was like thousands of years. So I really have concerns about how quickly the bacteria can solve the problem given the deep sea nature of it. And by the way, I'd like to add something else to your general comment, and that is how do people bring good ideas to BP? One of the things that surprised me is I've heard from many people have contacted me about, I've got a good idea, but I can't get BP to listen. I've heard this many times, and it makes me wonder myself how open the system is to allow entrepreneurs or just people with good ideas to help out in a crisis like this. I just don't know the answer to that.
I would like to make one statement about the bioremediation, which is the use of the microbes. I worked at the Exxon Valdez oil spill for about 2 years, and bioremediation came up there, and yes, microbes degrade oil, and it works well on the surface, and better in warm environments. But one of the concerns is they usually do not add bacteria per se, but nutrients to enhance the growth of the bacteria. And the propellants that are used to disperse those nutrients are in fact often toxic to many of the macrophones. So they'll kill lots of animals while they're degrading the oil. So that's pros and cons of that.
The plus thing for the Gulf of Mexico is, and I think Dr. Matanya and Dr. both mentioned it, is that we do have natural seeps oil coming from the Gulf of Mexico. In fact, it's something like that 500,000 to 1.5 million barrels a year, but over about 600,000 square miles, so it's very much spread out. But what that has done is over time has evolved a really well-developed microbial community that consumes oil. So the Gulf has been well inoculated well before these spills happened to help at least address it. That's about the only positive thing that I can think of from that. Your second part of your question was the loop current. And I thought somewhere we'd have a question, is this going to affect Texas? And how could it affect Texas? And one thing that this oil spill has done, I think more people know about the loop current now than maybe ever before, because it's been everywhere, and that kind of thing. But it's a really good question, and that's a great concern, because as we watched over the last several days, one of the things that happens with the loop current is these gyres, these bubbles of water, routinely, about this time of year, begin to break off and move. So I'm going to let, what I think Paul, I think you have to, anyone else wants to kind of pick up.
Yeah, right now, in a way, the spill happened at a good time of the year for Texas because of these three important details. Number one, the loop current is actually not quite as strong in the spring as it is in the summer. And also, we see less of these meanders and rings flooding off the loop current in the spring and the summer. And of course, we don't have storms. But now the other shoe drops. As we move into July, the loop current will start to pick up momentum. And the other thing that happens is we get these rings or meanders or eddies that spin off to the northwest off the loop current. And so if there is oil at the surface or the subsurface areas close enough to where those meanders are, you can literally train oil and start moving toward the Texas coast. That's a kind of oceanographic process that's a little stronger in July, August, and September. The other thing, of course, is, as we all know, what else happens in July, August, and September, and that is, tropical storms. And I think once the tropical storm season starts hitting, all bets are off. The oil's going to be moved throughout the Gulf in whatever direction the storm is moving. And the worst thing is, the storm surge is going to push it up off the beaches and off if you could build berms to protect the Gulf, those berms will quickly get washed out. You all know what happens to our beaches during even a small storm. Sand berms just not going to withstand it for more than a few hours. And then it's going to be projected higher.